Why can't it? If Shane Bieber can have an upward trend like that, why can't Mike Soroka? He'll get tons of run support. You know his ratio is going to be great. Who's to say he can't put up another 50 strikeouts over the course of the year? That might be the answer there, Lenny. Only time will tell. I love Soroka. 22 years old, guys. It doesn't seem right? That he's that effective. How about, here's one for you. Frankie Montas. People forget how dominant he was last year when he had the drug suspension. And I know, you make all the jokes you want. That's fine, I get it. 9-2 with a 2.62 ERA. 103 to 23 in 96 innings pitched. 26 years old. 122 ADP puts him right at the 10th round. I look for that to fall. I think Frankie Montas, because people are just going to think about his suspension and think that's a fluke. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I really like Montas, though, and he's one that I'll be monitoring as we go. Again, to Lenny's point, Zach Wheeler's my next guy. 123 ADP. The guy's been nothing but consistent. 11-8 with the Mets last year. You gotta love now that he's with the Phillies. Again, he knows the division well. He'll have extra motivation when he plays his former team. Career 3.77 ERA. He's just 30 years old. You gotta love Zach Wheeler. And I love that he's in Philly. Max Fried. 145 ADP. 25 years old. I didn't realize. Seems to me like he'd been around forever. Not forever, but longer than he had, I guess. 25 years old. ERA a little bloated. 4.02. He kind of got knocked around the second half of the year. But when you talk about potential, you talk about him being in the Atlanta lineup, you got to love. Again, 145, you're talking about 11th, 12th round pick. That's value. And then lastly, I love Lenny's analysis. Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea, people forget. 2018, he's 12-9 with a 3.59 ERA. He wasn't much of a strikeout pitcher. But again, at 27 years old, he certainly has a ton of potential. At a 168 ADP, that's certainly a value. The next list is the fun list. And here's where we go. We all get to kind of contribute. I want to hear your guys' best version of this list as we go, okay? These are guys that have untapped potential yet, okay? These are guys that have... So when I'm doing this, right, you want to have a couple from the first list. You want to have a workhorse or two, maybe three. And then that second list where you got these guys with a high potential, you want to kind of fill in with that, so you got 3 or 4 that way. So you have 3 or 4 pitchers that way. And then I always like to come in with these wild cards, these high upside guys, right? These guys that, and I'm all over the place here, okay? Again, Lucas Giolito, first one I want to talk about. 51 ADP, you gotta love him. He's only 25 years old. Kind of came out of the nowhere last year. He was a highly touted prospect who had been thought to be a failure. Well, last year he kind of found it and turned into the ace that everybody thought he would be. Ace-like, anyway. Ace-light. 14-9. 3.41 ERA. 228 Ks. 176 innings pitched and 57 walks. 51 ADP puts him right in there in the 4th or 5th round. I think he could be better than this, guys, is my point. I think this guy has potential to be a first or second round pick. How about Glass now? 26 years old. People forget I think he tore was it his UCL? I can't remember. When he got injured last year, he was dominating, okay? 6-1 with a 1.78 ERA, just 14 walks and 76 Ks in 60 innings pitched. Just 26 years old. His ADP is 69. Not very good at math. I'm thinking it's 5th, 6th round. These are high upside guys, right? These are the guys that, boy, if you hit on them, you're sitting pretty. So those are your higher ADPs, right? Let's talk about a little bit lower. Let's talk about some later, because that's where you really want to be, right? This practice is meant to identify value. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to identify value so that if you do end up with a Walker Buehler, maybe take a chance on Sandy Alcantara. Right? Fill in some veteran guys and come back with Alcantara. 264 ADP. Guys, this is one I guarantee you is going to go up. Here we are on January 9th. And Sandy Alcantara's ADP is 264. Guys, I can't count that high. I don't know what round that is. It's at the end of your draft, though, right? He was 6-14 last year, which sounds terrible. His ERA was 3.88. 151 Ks and 81 innings pitched. 109, excuse me, let me say that right. 151 Ks and 81 walks. And 197 innings pitched as a 24-year-old. The Marlins are going to be better, and he's going to be a big part of it. I love Sandy Alcantara. I think it's a high upside lottery card I'm willing to buy. What do you guys think? Guys, again, I want to hear what you have. Who do you like in this bucket, this high upside guy, right? Someone maybe you can get at the end of the draft. The pitcher you can get that can save your team. How about Brandon McKay? I think Lenny was talking about him today. His numbers aren't great. When you look at his numbers from a whole, they're not spectacular. But when you think about the type of talent that he has and the team that he's pitching for, there's immense value here. Okay? His ADP is 250. I'm not going to give you the stats because they don't matter. He's pitching last year as a 23-year-old. He was cutting his teeth. Brandon McKay is going to be an ace. And you get him at the end of the draft. 20th round, 21st round. I'll back it up a little bit. Let's come a little closer. Here's a guy. You want to talk about counting stats? What about Robbie Ray? What do you guys think about Ray? His ERA is a little inflated, or at least it has been to this point. You have to think, though, this guy is a hard thrower. He's a strikeout pitcher. He struggled a little bit at times with his control, but 235 to 84 last year. 235 Ks and 174 innings pitched. I'll take that K to walk ratio. I'll take that workload. He's a good stats filler. If you have a guy like Mike Soroka, I highly suggest you getting a guy like Robbie Ray. It evens out. Right? Soroka's excellent ERA is going to even out the ERA of Robbie Ray that's a little bit inflated. A little bit lower, possibly, strikeouts of Soroka adds value when you draft a guy like Ray because you know he's going to strike out well more than a pitcher per inning. A batter per inning, excuse me. It's a good time to tell you, tonight's hour is brought to you by Basil's Aiden. So, you know, My wife got me this sifter, this whiskey sifter for Christmas, and I love it. It's got a cooling mechanism underneath it, a coaster that keeps the whiskey nice and cool. But I still have to have a couple cubes. I feel like it just tastes better when you have a couple cubes. Who's with me? Let's talk about one more guy in this bucket, and then I'm going to move on. We're going to talk about some more players. Don't go anywhere. I got plenty more players to talk about here. We're not just ending with these 3 buckets. Let me take another pause here. How many other episodes have you guys listened to me and I haven't talked about any batting? Okay? I'm telling you guys, I know my pitching shit. I just love to focus on the batting because I set this up this way at the beginning of the year. Okay? And again, I know this is a lot of information, but if you take those workhorses, you get 2 or 3 of them, then you go with the high upside guys, you take 2 or 3 of them, and then you go with these guys, the untapped potentials, and you go with 2 or 3 of them, chances are you're going to have a really solid deep lineup, okay? Let's talk about a couple pitchers, and this is great. Because these guys could probably fall in a couple of these buckets. Let's talk about Edrod, and let's talk about Yu Darvish. Edrod first, because, it's really interesting. He kind of goes unsung in that Boston lineup. He's kind of second fiddle, but really, if you think about it, Edrod's poised for a big year. I'll tell you, he's just 26 years old. He's brought up about the same time as Luis Severino. And there's always kind of been the comparison between the two, at least in my mind. I'm kind of a prospect hunter. I've known about these guys since they were rookies and before. But Edrod was lights out last year in the second half of the season. 34 games started, 213 Ks and 203 innings pitched. All were career highs from him last year. He won 19 games and had a 3.28 ERA. He won 14 of his 19 games from June 4th on. I really do believe Erod is poised for a really big year. Okay? And I didn't capture his ADP, so you guys will have to help me out there. Again, I'll give you another hyperlink. That's the article we're going off. That's the ADPs, okay? So help me out, someone. Tell me where Edrod's going. What his ADP is. So let's talk about him from the All-Star. So July 4th, I think, is a pretty good indicator. I like it. It's kind of the halfway mark, right? From July 4th on, he went 11-2. He had a 2.90 ERA, and he had 111 strikeouts on 105 innings pitched. Edrod is a value. He's one of those guys that you could put in that first bucket, the workhorses, right? But he's also one of those guys you can put in the second bucket because I really do think his upside is going to show true this year. The second guy I want to talk about, how about Yu Darvish? I had Yu Darvish in a lot of different formats last year, and I'll be honest, I cut him. I cut his ass so fast. It was awful. Awful watching him the first half of the year. But you know what? After the All-Star break, I kicked myself every time he went out for doing that. You have to be really careful about cutting guys prematurely. It's really hard, though, when you're giving up 3, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 5, 2, 3, 6. You can't, when you're giving up 106, thank you, Malpow. So you're talking about what? An 8th round pick out of Erod. He could be a 2nd or 3rd round value next year, right? That's what you're looking for. I love Yu Darvish. I guess the reason I put him in here, I don't know if... Sorry. Thank you. I was thinking Michael Gallup, Malpal.